I've realized lately that a huge part of the persona, the mask that I created as a child and grew into as a young adult, um, to pretend normalcy, to play human, if you will, was the performance of femininity. And I don't actually mean being feminine. That's kind of inherent if you're born with a female body. I mean the performance of the idealized version of what a female, what a woman is, playing to the male gaze. And if you're a guy, hang with me on this because I'm going to get to your part of this too, because men also have that same kind of role that society has told us that this is how we exist as X or Y. So just hang in there. If we haven't met, my name is Heather. I am a late diagnosed autistic and ADHD human, and I make content about my experiences as such. So if you enjoy this, I would appreciate it if you tap some of the little buttons down below and maybe come back for the next one, because it really does help out the channel growth. Thank you. All right, let's get back into it. So what do I mean when I say perform femininity? I mean that the messages that I got as a kid about what it meant to be a woman were very old school. I was raised by my grandparents, who in the 80s, 70s, 80s, when I was born, they were already in their 40s. So consider the messages that they got and that I picked up from them around what a woman was. And when I say messages, I don't just mean like subconscious messaging. I mean, I actually got told things like, you can be as smart as you want, but no one will listen to you if you're not pretty when you're saying it. Imagine how much that one messed me up. But for me, I realized very early on that if I was pretty and quiet and sweet and nice, that I was lovable, and that displaying emotion was hysterical, displaying anger was inappropriate, and displaying any sort of masculinity whatsoever was a no-go, which was very difficult for a little girl who's been 6 foot tall since she was 14 years old. So pretending that femininity was very important in the formation of who I was, that feminine ideal of smart but not too smart. Not so smart that you intimidate others. Kind, sweet, giving, caretaking, loving. These were the things that I was informed, either subconsciously or out loud, were the ideals for a woman to be. I heard someone say in a podcast one time, and I listened to so many things, I unfortunately cannot credit the original speaker on this, but they made the comment that if you have lived your life as a woman to cater to the male gaze, that menopause was going to be a very difficult transition for you. And I understand now what they meant by that. Because if you have been performatively female most of your life, then you have been living for the male gaze, for the validation that comes with pretending to be that ideal female. And when you hit perimenopause or menopause, a lot of those hormones that drove you to be that idealized feminine, to be that male gaze, just the beautiful enigma of woman, that those things kind of disappear because you become, well, invisible to the male gaze. And if that is how you obtained validation for who you were, then that's going to be a very scary transition for you. And when I say the male gaze, I don't mean men looking at me or men looking at you. I mean the male gaze as in the idealized version, the societal version of what it means to be female, of what it means to be feminine. And how would that play for men, for any male-born humans watching this? You also got messages about what it meant to be a man, right? Men don't cry. men are strong, men are reliable, men are providers, men do X, Y, and Z. You also got messaging about how it was to perform maleness, to perform man, right? Society created these idealized versions and told us that that is what we should aim to be. And so I think for many of us, when we hit that point of forming our persona, forming our mask, that's the things we aimed for. And men also go through a steep decline in hormones at a certain point in their life. It's called andropause. So, your testosterone drops sharply. Maybe the drive that you had to be that great provider or the hunter and not the gatherer or whatever performative things that you adopted as a male no longer really seem important or necessary. And you have to kind of start questioning, okay, well, now how do I perform male if these things don't work anymore for me? So I think that the natural progression of being human is that we do get to a point in our lives where we start to question these idealized things. Jung calls it the process of individuation, kind of taking apart that persona that we created in the early portions of our life to excel us as humans, and really kind of finding meaning and purpose in the afternoon of life. The second half of life, and what does it mean to not perform that persona anymore? So I think that it's a natural progression that many people experience. This is not a singularly neurodivergent kind of experience, but as a neurodivergent person and as a female born, late diagnosed autistic and ADHD human, I learned how to be from the messaging that I got from society, not just from my family, but from television shows, from movies that I watched growing up, from magazines that I read, from books that I encountered. All of these things helped build the persona that I thought would allow me to exist in some sort of normalcy, some sort of required level of societal normalcy, which I think is basically what our mask is. It's the persona that we've created to be more acceptable to society as a whole. And I think in my case, for sure, and that for many of us probably, the performance of masculinity or femininity played a big part in that. And for many neurodivergents, our sexuality and our personality of who we view ourselves as is often much more complicated than neurotypicals. Many of the things that society does deem necessary to exist as a woman or as a man, we may see no purpose in, and maybe you didn't adopt that as part of your mask because it made no sense to you. Maybe wearing dresses as a little girl was just not something that was important to you. For me, it wasn't important, it was instilled. I was made to wear frilly dresses and little socks with lace on them, and I was made to be the girly girl. I was made to be this smart but not too smart, sweet, kind, friendly, nice little girl who evolved into the woman who experienced feminism and decided, I wanted to be that woman. I wanted to be that woman who went to work, who took care of things, who used her intelligence to further her life, who made an income all of her own, who had to answer to no man. But I also held on to those idealized versions of femininity. So that meant for me, working all day, bringing home the bacon, and being the perfect mom, the perfect wife, the perfect female. Making all those meals, keeping that house clean and perfect, organizing everything for the children, making sure that I always looked nice so that what I said would be respected and heard, making sure that I met both idealized versions of femininity. And I'm sure that for many of you born into male bodies, you kind of evolved into that same thing. Like, I also want to be emotionally intelligent, but I want to be that strong man that never breaks in front of anybody. I want to be in touch with the parts of me that society tells me I'm not supposed to, but I have to perform this masculine version for my partner, for my parents, for my children, whatever the case may be. And I think that, neurodivergent or not, we reach a certain point in our lives where we have to start breaking those things down. And I think it might be even harder if you are neurodivergent, because we don't like change. We become very accustomed to the way things are. And change is difficult, especially when it's a bodily forced change. When the change starts occurring without your consent, when your body starts changing your hormones. And that really does, because, and people do not understand this, so I'm just going to make a little aside here, a caveat. Your sex hormones do not just dictate the body that you're in, right? Your production of estrogen, your production of testosterone also affects things like your blood sugar, your cortisol levels, your ability to function, your drive. All of these things in flux throughout your life kind of dictate the behavior that you have in that portion of your life. And then when everything drops off and your body starts making those changes, I think it would be impossible for your brain not to start kicking in and going, well, wait a minute. Why did I want to be that? Why was I performing that so hard? Why did I need that acceptance? I don't really feel like I need that anymore. Where was all that coming from? And part of it was hormones, but part of it was societal expectation, at least for me. I can only speak for myself. So when I got to this point now where, the body is aging, the face is aging, she ain't what she used to be, the old gray mare ain't what she used to be, and started questioning these performative behaviors as I started unmasking, the two have kind of coincided. And I've realized that a big portion of who I have pretended to be for the majority of my life was performative femininity. Was that ideal that I got as a child, that if I was not pretty enough, no one would care. No one would listen. I could be the smartest person on the earth, and no one would hear a word I said if I didn't look nice when I said it. That's a hard thing to break. And it's a very detrimental thing to our self-esteem, your mental well-being, all of these things. Because if you built life based on, I am only acceptable if I perform this, and this on this checklist of femininity or masculinity, I'm only a good human if I do things in this prescribed manner. When you start taking that apart, it's kind of hard not to adopt some shame around, one, the performance that you did, and two, who am I now without these things? For me, I'm glad I've reached this point in my life. And if you've watched some of my more recent videos, had the breakdown that I've had and the burnout that I've hit, because it really has allowed me to just start from scratch, just have a fully fresh sheet of paper with no prior imprinted checklists on it and go from there. Right? We want to find purpose in our pain. We want to find meaning in the things that we've experienced. And I think that I have gotten to the point where I'm able to kind of finally see the meaning in my experiences, not just break them apart and shame myself for the things that I've done or who I've been or why I've been that way, not just to just deconstruct things from I've been neurodivergent this whole time. I've been autistic and ADHD this whole time. How much of everything that I've done in my life has been about pretending I was not those things. It's finding purpose in why you were those things. And accepting that it is, and it will be something different in the future. because the performance of femininity has really gotten me nothing but heartache. Pretending to be the idealized woman instead of just a woman, or just me, just who I am, and not even taking into account the feminine aspect or the masculine aspect. Those things have been detrimental to me. The pressures that I put on myself to comply to these checklists that never existed. They weren't real. They're not real. And I hope you get to a point where you realize none of that is real. Like, we all just kind of made it up and agreed that this is what it's like to be a male or to be a female or to be whatever. And especially if you're of a certain age group, you really got very hard messages about what it was to be X or Y chromosome. And I think the opening up of conversations around sexuality, around how we identify as a body, as a human, the idea of non-binary, that you don't have to exist to perform either of these ideals, has really been eye-opening for a lot of us, especially the older group of us that didn't really have those freedoms. Those categories didn't exist when we were kids. Those categories were just not there. It was X or Y chromosome. It was pretend this or pretend that. And now the world has opened up so much. The conversation has opened up so much about who we can be allowed to be as humans, and not as a performative sex, as a performative version of the body that you may have been born into, or changing the body that you were born into because it doesn't fit the inside version. I think all of these things are great conversations to have, and they're great things to incorporate in our conversations about neurodivergence, because the occurrence of LGBTQ, the occurrence of transsexuality, of non-binary, these things are very high in the neurodivergent community because we don't see things on the plane that everyone else sees them. We don't necessarily always fall into the traps that society has set around who we're supposed to be. Unfortunately, I did. I bought it hook, line, and sinker, and spent decades pretending femininity, pretending the persona of the perfect woman, the sweet woman, the kind woman, the caregiver, the one who never ever asked for anything for herself, the self-sacrificing woman, the woman who did it all and held it together and looked great while she was doing it. I can't perform that anymore. I am just me. I am not feminine me. I am not masculine me. I am not any of these things that society has prescribed that I need to be. I'm just me. I'm a nerd who likes to research things. I collect rocks. I'm a mom. I'm a grandma. I am a woman born into a female body, and it does kind of fit me. But now I know that I can explore these concepts, and that I don't have to fit into any prescribed version of what I'm supposed to be acceptable, or to be heard, or to be seen, or to be appreciated. So, I hope that this conversation on performance of femininity, masculinity, sexuality, opened up some things for you, and maybe made you question how much have you been performing what society expected of you. And if it did, please let me know in the comments. Again, if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoy this type of video, I would really greatly appreciate it if you would tap the like button, leave me a comment, maybe subscribe and come back for more. That would be awesome. The channel is growing slowly but surely, and I look forward to having more conversations like this about neurodivergence and kind of delving into topics that I don't really see on a lot of neurodivergent channels. I don't like beating a dead horse, so to speak, and I don't like creating the same content that I see over and over again about what is autism, what does it look like to be autistic, what is, the checklist for autism. Because again, we are so much more complex than that as humans. We are so much more complex than that as autistic people, as ADHD people. Individuation is a process that is individual. And I think each of us need to start exploring more concepts around who we are and how we created who we are based on the societal ideals, and kind of start pulling those layers away and getting to what really fulfills us, what gives us meaning as humans, and kind of skewing it from the perspective of someone with a different type of brain. So if that's your jam, that's my jam. Come back, hang out, we'll talk more. And as always, I love you, and I will see you in the next one.